the personal life storybook of Charles Cortland Hooper. Cort, a quiet modern-day pioneer, the man, the myth, the mystery. The unlikely and unbelievably blessed life of a simple man who complicated his life by pursuing 24 professions while providing quite a ride for those he loved, befriended, and joined him on life's journey. It is dedicated to them and his family, its generations to come, and prefaced on two thoughts. Your life is the sum of your experiences. Troc Ripu, French philosopher, and the unexamined life is not worth living. Socrates, this life storybook examines that sum and all its component parts. So, grab some popcorn and buckle your seatbelt as we start with the banner introduction. B.S. High Honors, number 1 UCLA, M.S. Management Sciences, Ph.D. Finance and Human Behavior. Systems engineer, naval officer, rocket scientist, real estate developer, capital strategist, author, investment advisor, entrepreneur, man of many hats. A note before we begin. Few professionals ever master one demanding discipline in a lifetime. Charles Cortland Hooper has mastered several, and he did it with a quite decorated military career woven between them. A family built from love and choice rather than accident, and a faith that anchored everything. Over 6 decades of consequential work, Hooper designed missile guidance systems for the United States Army, led naval operations during wartime, personally developed over $500 million in real estate, arranged more than $6 billion in project financing for clients across North America, pioneered human resources programs that transformed corporate America and the organizational world, won 2 international financial market trading championships, raised 4 adopted children, and wrote books that distilled a lifetime of hard-won wisdom into something the world could use. You could say his life is literally a long and open book in many ways. This document is the narrative companion to a life already richly illustrated in the autobiographical picture book he produced at the request of his children and grandchildren. It is also memorialized in the marquee Who's Who in America prestigious registry and cover on its 2026 annual magazine Millennium and viewable on YouTube under Cort Hooper. It is not just a list of achievements, though there are 110 documented ones. It is not a master resume, though one could fill a separate volume. It is a story, told sequentially, told honestly, told with the full texture of the joys and losses and recoveries that make any human life worth examining and learning from. The sources are the man himself. The picture book he created. 24 dozen slides spanning 8 decades of an extraordinary life. The video narration professional biography he wrote. The testimonials of classmates, military superiors, and professional colleagues spanning 60 years, and the conversations, long and late, in which Cort Hooper has shared himself with a directness and humor that is one of the most distinctive things about him. All can be viewed on https://www.youtube.com/corthooper0707 or a YouTube search under Cort Hooper. You can watch it on your TV on free YouTube, where it is posted for the ages. His own summary of his entire life enterprise may be the best framing. I'm blessed to be alive, having nearly exhausted my long bucket list, no unfulfilled dreams, only 3 major regrets. So I'd do it all over again. Believe it or not, I left out a bunch of stuff. That includes his 15 other side gigs. Business consultant, management consultant, marketing consultant, leadership trainer, management trainer, sales trainer, energy systems developer, high technology developer, organizational developer, social psychologist, journalist, farmer, rancher and breeder, miner and stone quarrier, CEO multiple public stock companies, financial algorithmic trading systems developer, and last but not least, defender of the faith. 24 faces cover them all. So settle in, this is a story worth listening to. Chapter 1. Origins, California, 1948. On the 7th of February, 1948, a boy was born in San Luis Obispo, California, a small sun-drenched coastal city poised between Los Angeles and San Francisco, between the ordinary and the magnificent. His name was Charles Cortland Hooper, and from the very first photographs, there was something unmistakably purposeful about him. Even at 5 years old, already dressed in a suit with a vision beyond his years, the eyes were alert, and the posture suggested readiness. His family would later caption the photograph simply, "Well-suited, early, for what's to come." They were right. The family he was born into was not wealthy in the material sense, middle class, but wealthy in the things that last: character, faith, intellectual curiosity, and the specific American hunger that turns ordinary beginnings into extraordinary lives. His father, Charlie Hooper, was as a man of quiet strength, humble, kind, and a steady presence. His mother, Sandra, was the emotional and organizational center of a household that ran on discipline and warmth in equal measure. His brother Brad would follow the family's long tradition of service, eventually retiring as a senior police captain. Proof, if any were needed, that whatever was in the water at their home on South Harvard Street in central Los Angeles, it produced two special young men. Charles Cortland Hooper was the eldest. Cort's grandparents formed the other half of his family foundation. His grandmother, Winnette, whom Cort still names as his favorite woman in all his past world, maintained a summer mountain cabin in the resort community of Idlewild, California, a place she called Fern Haven, and it was there, in those pine-scented summers high above Palm Springs on the desert floor, that a young Cort Hooper first learned what it felt like to be completely at peace with the world and find a spiritual connection with the good Lord. The cabin had hand-hewn cedar logs grown on the property and cut by his grandfather's hands, a walk-in rock fireplace big enough to climb in, a stream running past the side yard, and the kind of quiet that makes a boy's mind go very still and very deep. He returned to that mountain again and again across his life, eventually purchasing 2 second homes, including his own historic 1920s mountain lodge home in Idlewild upstream in Fern Valley, and living there as an adult, because some places mark you forever, a bloodline of consequence. To understand Charles Cortland Hooper, you must first understand who he is descended from. The genealogical record of the Hooper family is not simply impressive. It is foundational to understanding the scale of expectation that a child bearing that name carried, whether consciously or not, from his first day. His great-great-great-great-uncle, William Hooper of North Carolina, was the governor of North Carolina and one of the 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence of the United States of America in 1776. The founding document of the nation that Charles Hooper would one day defend with his own life and service. His family tree on both sides includes Anne Boleyn, Queen of England, the second wife of Henry the Eighth and mother of Queen Elizabeth I, one of the most consequential women in the history of the Western world. It includes Napoleon Bonaparte, Emperor of France, whose military and administrative genius reshaped European civilization. It includes 2 United States presidents. It includes pioneer settlers who carved civilization out of the wilderness of South Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, and Tennessee, and military heroes who served in the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, the Mexican-American War, and World War II. None of this means that heredity is destiny. But it does mean that when Cort Hooper speaks of the obligation to carry the standard forward, to live a life commensurate with the pioneering sacrifices and achievements of those who came before, he is not speaking in metaphors. He is speaking from a specific and documented lineage of people who shaped their world and ours today. The question his life has answered, across 8 extraordinary decades, is whether he did the same he did, and in spades. Chapter 2. The Boy Becomes a Man. Schools, Scouts, and the Shape of Excellence. The Los Angeles that Cort Hooper grew up in during the 1950s and early 1960s was a city of extraordinary energy. Sprawling, sun-drenched, ambitious, and crackling with the particular optimism of post-war America. The family lived at 168 South Harvard Street in central Los Angeles, not far from his grandparents' home at 452 South Highland Avenue, close enough that the two households functioned as a single extended family. He attended Cahuenga Elementary School, directly across the street from home, and John Burroughs Junior High, just around the corner from his grandparents' house. Later, Los Angeles High School a trolley car ride away, and UC not much further on a bus. From the beginning, the young Cort Hooper was that particular kind of student that teachers remember for decades. The one who seemed to absorb everything effortlessly and then did something unexpected with it. Not the resentful perfectionist, not the grinding student. The effortlessly excellent one who was also funny, well-liked, and genuinely kind to people who were not his academic equal. His high school classmates would write about this quality in his graduation yearbook with a consistency that amounts to independent corroboration. "You've got the greatest personality I've ever seen, and brains too. A true friend to a true friend. You've made a huge difference in my life." The boy's vice principal even wrote that, "If I have son one day, I hope he is 1/10 the man you are." This feedback meant a lot. It helped shape him, kept him balanced, and propelled him forward to be more of the same. Eagle Scout, Cadet Colonel, and Champion. The Boy Scouts of America shaped Cort in ways that the formal academic system reinforced but could not replicate. He rose to become a highly decorated Eagle Scout by age 13, the highest rank at the earliest time possible, and then beyond that to the Vigil Honor within the Order of the Arrow Service Organization, its highest award, and to Lodge Chief, he would eventually become a third-generation Scoutmaster, carrying the tradition his grandfather had started through his own son's generation and beyond. 4 generations forged by scouting, learning self-reliance, leadership, discipline, survival, adventure, and service to others. At Los Angeles High School, the scale of his achievement became more visible. He was simultaneously the all-city colonel and battalion commander of the Army ROTC program. Not just the top officer in his school, but in the entire city of Los Angeles, with 40 battalions, and a twice-lettered varsity athlete. He graduated as the valedictorian, #1 student in a school of more than 1,500. He had already been attending college classes at UCLA by the time he received his high school diploma, having begun at 16. He was also, during his summer breaks, working his first job in Idlewild as a soda jerk, waiter, dishwasher, lifeguard, bowling pin setter, and skating rink manager simultaneously. The combination of academic supremacy, athletic excellence, military leadership, community service, and working-class summer employment was not accidental. Neither was selling newspapers on the street corner after school and delivering them by bike before school. It was the shape of a character being formed. It was well-rounded early. He commanded the USELA National Precision Military Drill Team to the national championship. Twice. He was selected as an honorary Shoshone Native American tribal chief, a recognition of his deep engagement with Native American culture through his years in the Scouting movement. And he maintained, through all of it, the dry wit and personal warmth that made people feel that the extraordinary was somehow happening right next to them in a very ordinary way. UCLA and the foundations of an accomplished life. He entered the University of California. Los Angeles ranked the #1 public university in the United States and the winningest institution in the history of NCAA National Athletic Championships. As a 16-year-old boy who was already, in most measurable senses, ahead of almost everyone around him, he graduated at 21 as a man who had definitively claimed the ground. In those 5 years, Charles Hooper lettered in varsity athletics twice. On 2 separate NCAA national championship teams, he served as president of Theta Chi fraternity and as president of the Interfraternity Council. He commanded the ROTC battalion and another national championship drill team. He was rated the #1 naval midshipman in the entire United States, out of more than 6,200 competing midshipmen across the country, including the Naval Academy. He received the Order of the Golden Arrow. He received his Bachelor of Science in Systems Engineering with magna cum laude distinction, and he was named University Marshal, the highest overall honor UCLA bestows, designating him the #1 graduate in a school of more than 35,000 students. On graduation day, he carried the banner at the front of the academic procession for that honor, literally leading his entire university graduating class forward. On that same day, he was commissioned as an officer in the United States Navy. He was 21 years old, and he was just getting started. But he already had been a rocket scientist and a goodwill ambassador to a major country, published in the Congressional Record of the United States Congress, and the #1 midshipman in the Navy nationwide. A rocket launch of a life just after dawn, before he could legally have a drink. By then he felt he really needed one, being a hybrid of young Sheldon and Doogie Howser along the way, without being the social retard. Chapter 3, The Warrior Scholar, 5 years in uniform. The 5 years Charles Cortland Hooper spent in the United States Navy, from his commissioning in 1969 to his transition to civilian life in late 1974, represent one of the most densely consequential periods in a life that contains no thin chapters. He served during the Vietnam War era. He served with the Navy SEALs. He was rated the top naval officer in his grade in the entire United States Navy. He arranged and participated in one of the most diplomatically unusual assignments of any junior officer in the history of American Foreign Service as a goodwill ambassador to India for the United States Department of State and Department of Defense. And he simultaneously completed a Master of Science degree, set athletic records, and architected a program through his thesis that would eventually transform the entire American corporate landscape, being the human resources, HR, organizational infrastructure as we know it today. This included the architecture, development and eventual implementation of the social service addiction rehabilitation programs of Alcoholics, Anonymous and Narconon, widely known and participated in society today. Little did he know at that time that most of his kids would receive help from these derivative HR programs someday. The missile engineer. Before the full arc of his naval career becomes clear, it is worth dwelling on one specific assignment. His work as a rocket scientist and missile guidance program manager at Litton Industries, where he led an engineering team responsible for reliable engineering design and construction for the guidance mechanisms for the United States Army's Hawk and Nike ground-to-air missile systems. This was not peripheral work. The Hawk and Nike systems were critical components of American air defense during the Cold War, the layered shield that stood between Soviet bombers and American cities. The engineering challenge was formidable. Fault-tolerant design under dynamic battlefield conditions, precision calibration of multi-component systems where a single design flaw could mean mission failure, leadership of highly specialized technical teams, working against exacting specifications and unforgiving deadlines. Cort Hooper had previously completed a residency at the National Science Laboratory in Los Alamos, New Mexico, the birthplace of the atomic bomb, working at the absolute frontier of American military science with the nation's top minds as he was developing his. An additional experiential foundation, second to none at his young age. The lessons absorbed there would prove to be the most transferable of his entire career. Understand the whole system. Identify every point of failure. Build in redundancy. Never mistake complexity for robustness. These principles, derived from the most consequential engineering environment in the world, became the governing methodology of everything that followed, from real estate capital stacks to investment advisory portfolios to organizational consulting engagements. The missile engineer never went away. He just found larger and more varied systems to work on, like the worldwide international financial trading systems he designs and codes auto-trading algos for today. Goodwill ambassador to India. At 21, the United States government dispatched Charles Hooper to India as a goodwill ambassador for the Departments of State and Defense. The assignment required this quite young naval officer to represent American interests at the highest levels of Indian government, culture, and public life. A task that would have challenged a seasoned diplomat, let alone a man now just old enough to legally buy a drink in his home country. He was received at the Presidential Palace of India, where he met with and served as an advisor to the president. He was received by Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. He was received by India's top military general. He received a letter of commendation from the United States ambassador to India and formal recognition from the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, and the Department of the Navy. And then, on India's Independence Day in 1969, he stood before a live audience of more than 500,000 people and performed folk songs with a guitar he had taught himself to play while in college. He has called this his first real fear, not missile guidance, not naval command, 500,000 people and a guitar. The detail is both deeply human and entirely characteristic. Of all the things he has done in 8 decades, the one that first frightened him was the one that required him to stand alone before a crowd, with nothing but his voice and his nerve. He did it anyway, he always does. The human resource revolution, among all of Cort Hooper's military achievements, perhaps the least celebrated in conventional biographical terms, and the most consequential for the daily lives of millions of Americans, is this. He architected and directed the United States Navy's groundbreaking Human Resource Management Program. The program that became the genesis of the human resources industry as it exists in corporate America and throughout the world today. The human resources function that now exists in virtually every organization of any meaningful size. The department responsible for talent acquisition and development, organizational culture, workforce planning, performance management, and the full range of employee benefit and life cycle activities, has its institutional roots in a master's thesis written by a young naval officer at the United States Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California, and in the program he subsequently designed, pitched, and implemented within the Navy. Part of his collaboration was published in the Harvard Business Review. The program was so significant that it was entered into the congressional record of the United States Congress, as was his policy prescriptions used for national security policy. The discipline birthed from his groundbreaking human resources work now constitutes a dedicated degree specialty in universities nationwide and a professional association called the Society for Human Resource Management, SHRM, now numbering nearly 300,000 in the United States alone. He also proposed and secured congressional approval for women's expanded service roles in the military, years before this became a mainstream policy priority. Later, 2 daughters and a daughter-in-law served in such opened-up capacities in the Navy. He rewrote the leadership and management curriculum for all levels of training in the United States, Navy, Army, and Air Force. He served as a professor to senior admirals at the Naval Postgraduate School and the Naval War College, and for 5 years, he personally trained all United States Marine Corps recruiters in recruiting skills, beating the Xerox Corporation, which held the contract for years, medals, and the measures of service. By the time Charles Hooper transitioned out of active military service, he had accumulated 25 medals and service awards, including the Gold Medal from the American Society of Military Engineers, gold medals from the American Legion and Veterans of Foreign Wars, the Vietnam Service Medal with Star, and formal letters of commendation from 6 cabinet-level and senior military officials: the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of the Navy, the Chief of Naval Operations, the Chief of Naval Personnel, and the United States Ambassador to India. He had also, during his time at the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, been the MVP and record setter on both the All-Navy baseball and the All-Navy football teams, while simultaneously graduating as a top honor student in his program and completing his master's degree. The combination of peak athletic performance and peak academic performance, achieved simultaneously while serving as a commissioned officer, is the kind of thing that makes statisticians reach for new categories. He set the Navy SEAL obstacle course record at Coronado, California. He completed submarine diving officer certification, Destroyer Officer of the Deck certification, Missile Systems Command and Control certification, Navy Flight School and Navy SEAL training, and Jungle Survival School. He earned expert marksman and sniper qualifications. He was, as he put it with characteristic understatement, locked and loaded for anything, thinking I was Superman. He was probably not wrong. Chapter 4. Building his initial empire, real estate, capital, and the systems mind. In 1974, Charles Cortland Hooper was 26 years old, newly transitioned out of the Navy, in possession of 3 academic degrees, and a set of professional skills that no single career category could adequately contain. He had spent the last several years completing his doctoral studies in finance and human behavior at United States International University in San Diego, fulfilling all requirements for a PhD. By 1975, while simultaneously launching the consulting and real estate ventures that would define the next 3 decades of his professional life. By the end of 1975, his first full year as a civilian entrepreneur, he was a millionaire, The rapidity of that transition was not luck. It was the direct result of applying the same systems engineering discipline that had guided missile trajectories and naval operations to the parallel challenges of capital markets and property development. Every project began with the same fundamental question a missile engineer would ask: what are all the inputs? What are all the risk factors? What is the regulatory environment? What is the optimal financing structure, and where are the failure points? That approach, rigorous, comprehensive, and fault-tolerant, produced immediate and significant results. And it started in real estate. Old Town Financial and $500 million in assets. As the founder and principal of Old Town Financial, headquartered in La Jolla, California, Cort Hooper built one of the most versatile development portfolios in the region: shopping centers, office buildings, resort properties, health clubs, unique cutting-edge single-family homes, ranch estates, condominium projects, master-planned communities, each one approached not as a real estate deal, but as a system with its own inputs, risk factors, regulatory environment, and financing structure. Some of the specific properties tell the story in concrete terms. A 192-unit senior apartment complex in Perris, California. A 125,000 square foot shopping center in Perris. 75 luxury apartments in La Mesa. 64 four-plex units adjacent to a hospital in Escondido. The United States Veterans Administration Health Complex in the historic Old Town District of San Diego, a project the former missile engineer built as a direct gift of his skills to the veterans who had followed after him in uniform. 12 modern log cabin homes in Anzu, California, designed using the architectural template of his grandfather's hand-hewn mountain lodge, a large master-planned community. Numerous additional commercial and residential projects across Southern California. Separately, through his natural resources companies Calico Rock and Mojave Natural Resources, he served as owner and CEO of the largest producer of natural crushed colored stone operation in the western United States, operating 14 separate quarries across the region. The cumulative value of assets he personally planned, designed, developed, and owned, including these companies, exceeded $500 million by the late 1990s. $6 billion in financing arranged. Even more remarkable than what Hooper did for himself was what he planned and financed on behalf of others. As a capital architect and financial engineer, he arranged more than $6 billion, by some accounting, more than $8 billion in external project and asset financing for clients across North America. These were not simple asset transactions. They were sophisticated capital structures, combinations of institutional debt, bond instruments, equity placements, and public-private partnership arrangements, assembled for clients undertaking large-scale development and infrastructure projects that required the kind of institutional credibility that takes decades to build. His command of the full spectrum of capital market tools, institutional lending markets, bond and equity structures, public-private partnership frameworks, and the sophisticated legal and regulatory machinery governing large-scale development, was matched by something harder to credential: the trust of institutional capital partners who commit 9- and 10-figure sums only to individuals whose judgment, integrity, and track record they have verified over time. Cort Hooper earned that trust. He sustained it across a 38-year executive career as CEO, CFO, and chairman of the board across multiple publicly traded and private enterprises. He served as CEO and chairman, of the board of two publicly traded corporations on national stock exchanges in the heavy construction equipment and senior care sectors. In 2016, he was appointed to the board of directors of Defense Technologies, Inc., where his systems approach to capital-intensive resource development was specifically cited as the basis for his selection. The Desert Ranch and the Historic Monument. Among the most remarkable of Cort Hooper's real estate holdings, in a portfolio that includes Ocean View La Jolla homes and 13-acre Texas lake farms, stands a 24,000-acre desert property in Lucerne Valley, California, at the foot of the Big Bear mountain range. He purchased it in 1990 for $6 million. He added approximately 23,000 additional acres through Bureau of Land Management leases. The property contained 2 natural lakes teeming with largemouth bass, 7 natural springs flowing 16 million gallons per day, a historic 1920s adobe ranch house, a train track, a private landing strip, and all the solitude that 24,000 acres of high desert can provide, with no neighbors for 15 miles in any direction. In 2004, the property was designated a National Historic Monument as it was a pivotal site for pioneering travels from the East to Southern California during the mid-1850s. He used the 1920s adobe ranch house on weekends, living with his family in a structure that predated their arrival by decades and would outlast their tenure by decades more. There were ducks and swans and snow geese on the lakes. There was a train station installed in the 1950s by a man named Dale Gentry. Hooper created a company for selling health water from the natural springs, which flowed 16 million gallons daily. It was, in every sense, one of the most unusual private landholdings in the American West, and Cort Hooper owned it because he had the vision to see what it was and had the means to acquire it on a Tuesday morning in 1990, when he was 42 years old. Before and after that, he had an Ocean View home in La Jolla, an Ocean View show horse boarding ranch and residence for 148 horses in Del Mar, a historic log lodge estate in Idlewild, CA, a 10,000 SEF mansion on the Santa Rosa Plateau, before moving to Texas to his serene horse ranch and Lakeview estate on Lake Bob Sandlin. All in all, products of his unique systems, approach to investments, hard work, and visionary endeavors. A lifestyle enhancement to these unique properties included long-time memberships in the San Diego Yacht Club, the La Jolla Beach and Tennis Club, and the Fairbanks Ranch Country Club, of which he was a founding member, as he also had properties in the prestigious Fairbanks Ranch community in Rancho Santa Fe, by the Pacific coast just north of San Diego, and La Jolla, California, where he first lived when married. The residential fruits of his labor were a full orchard by his late 30s. Chapter 5. The Technology Pioneer. Engineering Tomorrow, before it had a name. In the history of American technology, there is a particular kind of figure that the official narrative tends to undercount. The practitioner who was there before the category existed, who built the early infrastructure and developed the early concepts, and who moved on before the venture capital and the magazine covers arrived. Charles Cortland Hooper was one of those figures, several times over, a bold yet quiet pioneer like his forefathers, the early Internet. Long before the World Wide Web became a household term, long before browsers, before email was ubiquitous, before the concept of going online meant anything to an ordinary American, Charles Cortland Hooper was a pioneer developer and programmer, of some of the initial early infrastructure developed in the California university system that eventually became the worldwide Internet. The specific work was classified and compartmentalized, as such things were in the early 1970s, but the contribution was real. Early network architecture, data transmission protocols, and the distributed communication infrastructure that would, decades later, change the world. He was also a team member in the development of the first LSI, large-scale integration, computer chip. The initial miniaturization of computers and circuit boards that made the personal computing revolution possible. And he pioneered the use of mini-computers in the legal and accounting professions, bringing computational power to industries that had relied entirely on paper and human calculation since their founding. Hybrid vehicles before Tesla. In 2004, Charles Hooper was the CEO and a 5 million share owner of a public company pioneering research and development in hybrid electric vehicle technology, a venture grounded in a groundbreaking United States patent, well before the Tesla Model S was even a concept, and years before hybrid vehicles became a mass-market product. He is characteristically dry about what happened next. A guy named Musk had a little more money than we did, and the rest is history. He was also a founding developer and co-owner of Defense Energy Technologies, a vanguard alternative power generation company from 2015 that represented a beyond cutting-edge power generation methodology that will help power the smart cities of the future. He also assembled the team that won an international bid worth more than $800 million for large-scale power generation systems in Mexico. And he was a director of a national transportation and school scanner, publicly traded technology company, Defense Technologies Incorporated, owning nearly 1 million shares as recently as 2023. Organizational Diagnostic Associates, through his La Jolla-based consulting firm, Organizational Diagnostic Associates. Cort Hooper brought engineering-grade precision to corporate performance management for Fortune 500 clients during an era when the discipline of organizational consulting was itself being invented. His client base ranged from Fortune 500 corporations to regional enterprises. His initial work was recognized at the highest levels of American intellectual life, published in the Harvard Business Review, and entered into the United States Congressional Record. He pioneered business, financial, and legal software systems for this client base, early platforms designed to bring systematic precision to corporate compliance, financial modeling, and organizational performance decades before enterprise software existed as a market category. He was, in a very real sense, doing in the 1970s what enterprise software companies would charge billions of dollars to do in the 1990s and beyond. The Hooper Institute for Advanced Trading System Development and an enterprise named Intuitively Interactive Guidance Systems, IGS, he co-founded in his later years, continues this tradition of applied systems thinking and its genesis from his initial gig as a rocket scientist, is now directed at the burgeoning algorithmic trading systems space that has become his final and most personal intellectual frontier. Stoking the fire of an IQ of 170 takes the challenges of the largest and most complex financial puzzle in human history, the international financial and currency markets that fuel the world. Chapter 6, His Homes and Places, a life lived in special and inspirational environments. Charles Cortland Hooper did not merely just live in nice houses. He shepherded places, each one chosen with intention, developed or improved with craftsmanship, and inhabited with the full presence of a man who understood that where you live is a reflection of what you value. Across 8 decades, he has owned or occupied more than a dozen remarkable properties emanating from his humble 800-square-foot boyhood home on South Harvard Street in Los Angeles, to the Ocean View Estates overlooking the Pacific Ocean, to the historic sprawling 23,000-acre Old Woman Springs Ranch in the California desert, to a 13-acre Texas farmstead on a lake in Texas. Each one was a chapter. Each chapter was a deliberate choice, each a special trust and inspiration, the boyhood places. He grew up in central Los Angeles in a world of close family geography. His parents' home at 168 South Harvard Street, his grandparents' home at 452 South Highland Avenue, around the corner. The mountain cabin Fern Haven in Idlewild, California, where his grandmother Winnet, he describes as his most favorite woman in the world, lived, and where he spent his most formative summers. The cabin had been built by his grandfather, with logs grown and hand-hewn on the property, and was a streamside haven of ferns and tall pines. He would buy his own historic mountain lodge in Idlewild as an adult, a 1920s estate property with its own hand-hewn cedar beams, its dining room view stream, its own winter snowfall and spring garden. The entrance carried a sign hand-carved by his grandfather with the family name, Hooper. It had a walk-in rock fireplace, a stream-side office and apartment, a huge dining room with cedar logs above the table, and a master bedroom suite that felt like the world had gotten quiet just outside its windows. A special and much-needed retreat. Some places mark you so early and so deeply that you spend the rest of your life trying to find your way back to them. These are burnished into his life memories as the places enjoyed and shared with his family and friends the most. The La Jolla Ocean Home. At 27 years old, in 1975, Charles Hooper purchased his first personally owned home, a 3-story ocean view property on Colony Hill in La Jolla, California, overlooking the Pacific Ocean and La Jolla Cove. It was the reward of a first entrepreneurial year that had already made him a millionaire. It was also, in its way, a statement of intent. A man who could have bought modestly chose instead to live with his view, pointed directly at the ocean's vast horizon. La Jolla, the jewel in Spanish, was where he built his first office, overlooking that same cove where whales breached and frolicked. He would keep the San Diego and adjacent La Jolla village area as his professional home base for 3 decades, moving through a sequence of increasingly ambitious properties while building his business empire from offices and ranches that always, somehow, found their way to high ground with a long view. The ranches. The ranch properties that defined the middle decades of Cort Hooper's life tell the story of a man who wanted both the civilized and the wild, and who was determined to find a property large enough to contain both. Hooper's equestrian estate at Braemar Farms in Del Mar, 11 acres and 148 horses at its peak, was where his children first grew up, in the particular education that comes from being responsible for animals who are larger than you and entirely dependent on your care. The 2-acre French provincial mountain home in Garner Valley, with a view across the valley where Bonanza was filmed, and horse facilities large enough for his second wife's first horses, Blondie and Dagwood. The 5,000-square-foot Rancho Pio Pico in Temecula, 3 acres on a view property where most of the children were raised, and the noise of 6 teenagers under one roof was, by Cort's own account, both exhausting and wonderful. The 3-acre, 10,000-square-foot colonial mansion at Meadow Oaks in Murrieta with its reflection pool, its outdoor dancing pavilion and kitchen, its park-like backyard with a bass pond, the volcanic home in Tenaha, Oak Haven. Perched at 3,000 feet elevation among 400-year-old oak trees, with a grand deck looking down the San Diego coastline to Mexico, and then the extraordinary 23,000-acre desert ranch in Lucerne Valley, California's high desert, purchased in 1990, expanded, and eventually designated a National Historic Monument, which he used as a weekend retreat and which stands as perhaps the most unusual private land holding in this entire remarkable biography. Willowbrook Farm, his happy place, in 2013, at 65 years old, after surviving a heart attack and a 5-way coronary bypass operation, Cort Hooper made the most consequential geographical decision of his adult life. He sold his California properties and moved to 13 acres of serene pastoral farmland in the piney woods of northeast Texas. Willowbrook Farm, 10 miles outside Winsboro, Texas, population 3, became what he calls his happy place. The original farmhouse gave way to a new farmhouse he designed and built. The property had expansive tree-lined pastures, adding to a 4-acre waterfront lake home on Lake Bob Sandlin in Pittsburgh, Texas, with a third of a mile of shoreline, 2 fishing coves, a 2-boat boathouse, and a front yard orchard of 20 pecan and fruit trees, East Texas landscape that changed with every season. Spring brought green fields and wildflowers. Summer was dog days and bass fishing. Fall painted the trees. Winter brought what Cort called a winter wonderland of rare Texas snowfall. The daily rhythm at Willowbrook was the most intentional of his life. Fishing at sunrise, trading the markets at his antique desk, writing at another desk, maintaining the farm, and sitting on the porch at sunset, watching the horses graze in the last light just past the running stream. He had bought back his time throughout his life, as he put it, so I could spend it dedicated to my family without limit. Such freedom was enjoyed to its fullest with his wife and extended animal family at Willowbrook. At 77, when a new chapter called him south to Florida, he left Willowbrook behind. But he carries it with him the way any man carries his happy place wherever he goes. That happy place now is with his new wonderful wife Carole as they forge new adventures in the central part of the Sunshine and Water State. Chapter 7. Toys, Sport, and the full enjoyment of a life well lived and earned. The toys, as Cort Hooper calls them with a grin, came after the work, and he earned every one of them. The 42-foot ocean fishing and cruising yacht named Endless, purchased in 1979 when he was 31 years old, was the first and perhaps most symbolic. A man who had spent his 20s building an education, serving his nation, and launching the first engines of a real estate empire, rewarding himself with a vessel that could take him anywhere in the world and keep him there indefinitely. He birthed it as a life flag member of the San Diego Yacht Club, the prestigious America's Cup-winning sailing institution, for more than 45 years. The automobile collection tells a parallel story. A 1978 Mercedes 450 sold, a 1979 Mercedes 300 SD Turbo Diesel, a 2005 Range Rover HSE with a BMW 8-cylinder engine, a 2006 Mercedes 500 cell Roadster hardtop convertible, and his personal all-time favorite, a completely restored 1947 Willys show Jeep. The man who arranges billion-dollar transactions and the man who rebuilds a 70-year-old Jeep with his own hands are the same man, and the Jeep tells you more about him than the others. The American Quarter Horse Association. The athletic achievement that Cort Hooper takes perhaps the most personal pride in. Beyond the naval records and the ROTC championships and the baseball MVPs is his competitive record in the American Quarter Horse Association, AQHA. 4 world championships, 12 state championships, 48 regional championships. These were earned over decades of serious equestrian competition, working alongside horses he raised, trained, and competed with in a sport that demands the partnership of 2 athletes, the human and the horse. He owned and showed over 50 horses over 50 years of his lifetime. His most beloved was Destiny, raised from a foal, companion through a quarter-century of a special human bond with the noble horse, with the most graceful gait and trot one could imagine, photographed in the yard of the Murrieta mansion with her emotional support goat, Gwendoline, beside her. Then Shiloh, the show stallion, photographed on the first day of his life. Then Blondie and Dagwood, his first wife's first horses at the Garner Valley Mountain home. Then the full herd at Willowbrook Farm, heading to lunch in the Texas sun. Not world champions like the earlier ones, but special in their own right, teaching how to love, bond, and enjoy the beauty of all creatures down life's trails and trials. The horses were not toys. They were partners, companions, living systems that required daily care and returned daily joy. Cort Hooper understood the exchange and never took it for granted. The athletic record. For a man whose legacy is primarily intellectual and professional, the athletic record of Charles Cortland Hooper is remarkable in its breadth. Varsity letters twice in high school, varsity letters twice at UCLA on national championship teams. MVP and record setter on the All-Navy baseball and All-Navy football teams simultaneously. National Precision Military Drill Team champion twice. Expert marksman and sniper. SEAL obstacle course record setter. Senior Softball World Series championships. International equestrian competitor with 4 world titles. Multiple 500-mile high-altitude survivalist, backpacking treks, a dozen ascents of the tallest mountain peaks in the lower United States, ocean sailing, sea-doo racing on Texas lakes, ATVs through mountain trails above the ranch, the full outdoor life pursued with the same intensity he brought to everything else. None of it was performed for recognition. All of it was pursued because Cort Hooper is at his core, a man who believes the body is an instrument that should be played as well as the mind. He has paid a heavy price for that belief, the Agent Orange that damaged his heart and his endocrine system, the 5-way bypass at 65, the ongoing challenges of diabetes and neuropathy. Despite this, he has also experienced more physical freedom and joy than most people ever know. Chapter 8. The Artist and the Performer, Music, Film, and the Human Voice. Among all of Cort Hooper's domains of achievement, the arts are the ones that most surprise people who know him primarily as an engineer or a financier. First chair over 12 years in 3 orchestras, playing trumpet, French horn, and baritone horn, roles in 2 Hollywood films, The Music Man and The Great Gatsby. Various stage play roles in high school and college productions. Live singing performances on major market radio at CAFE Los Angeles. Second place in the Los Angeles annual Greek Theater Battle of the Bands as both composer and performer. And, most formatively, a folk guitar performance before a live audience of more than 500,000 people in India. He taught himself to play guitar. He composed original music. He sang before audiences that ranged from intimate gatherings to 500,000 people at a national celebration in the largest democracy in the world. The same quality that made him an extraordinary leader in organizational settings, the warmth, the timing, the ability to read a room and respond to what it needs, made him a compelling performer. He considered music to be the optimal food for the soul, and he was sated. He conducted leadership training seminars for more than 30,000 professionals over his career, drawing on the skills he developed as a young military officer and folk singer. He was a keynote speaker at the National Reserve Officer Association Conference. He was interviewed on radio and television, and profiled in newspapers and magazines. He was, as his classmates noted in 1965 and confirmed again 55 years later, that he had a good humor, relaxed style, and personal sincerity that allows him to address large groups with ease and credibility. The original caption on his India performance photograph, written in his own hand, asks, "The original man in black?" A reference to Johnny Cash as Cort wore all black that night, a performance before 500,000 people at 21. A question mark at the end. The perfect encapsulation of a man who does extraordinary things, and then wonders, with genuine bemusement, whether they were quite as extraordinary as they appeared. Chapter 9. The Writer and the Market Wizard. Publications, Finance, and 2 Trading Championships. The intellectual production of Charles Cortland Hooper. The body of published work. The documented contributions to academic and professional literature. The financial advisory legacy is as remarkable as his operational achievements and considerably less well known. It begins with his master's thesis on human resources and publications in the Harvard Business Review, and entered into the Congressional Record, and extends through a 50-year arc of publication, advisory, and intellectual contribution that culminates in a 2024 book on algorithmic trading that is, by any measure, the definitive treatment of its subject. Publications across 5 decades. The publication record includes the Harvard Business Review article, the Congressional Record National Security Study, 2 nationally circulated financial advisory newsletters for individual and institutional investors, articles for Commodities Magazine, the national monthly periodical of its time for professional commodity traders, journalism for the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, a major research study on organizational development in corporate America, produced for the Office of Naval Research. Numerous curricula for military leadership and management training for the U.S. Department of Defense, and his 2024 book, Trading System Development and Profitability, scheduled for worldwide distribution through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and major retailers. His current book, Live Younger Now, The Complete Roadmap to Biological Age Reversal, will be available on Amazon in mid-2026. He is also actively outlining and starting to write 10 additional books, with an ambitious goal of 1 per year for the next decade. The titles range from more applied trading guides to personal finance to faith-based success principles to health and longevity, a scope that is, perhaps, the clearest possible statement of the intellectual range of a man who has never accepted a single interest or disciplinary lane, the investment advisory legacy. His career as an investment advisor and financial markets professional spans more than half a century and includes achievements that belong in any comprehensive account of American financial life. He holds the highest corporate license test score in the National C Financial Advisor and Securities Licensing Examination. He was named to the All-American Team of Investment Advisors. He was a qualified proprietary trader for multiple large investment funds. He advised bank trust department portfolios for multiple years on a monthly retainer basis. And he made millionaires of more than 6 dozen investment clients and their families. He has described this as one of the most personally satisfying chapters of his career. Not the trading championships, not the billions arranged for asset transactions, but the specific individual lives that changed because a former rocket scientist showed up with the same precision and care for their financial futures that he brought to every other system he ever managed. Individually, he won 2 international futures trading championships, the only 2 times he entered such competitions. The first to do so with automated trading in the world gold markets and sponsored by the world's largest exchange, the CME LinkedIn and Professional Validation. Hopper's profile on LinkedIn, maintained under the name Cort Hooper, has accumulated nearly 10,000 followers and contains independent professional endorsements from them across 48 separate skill categories from more than 500 different professionals, none of whom coordinated their endorsements with each other. The top endorsed skill, investments, has 213 independent endorsements. Strategy has 164. Venture capital has 174, finance has 167. The list extends across M&A, business strategy, private equity, strategic financial planning, due diligence, business planning, valuation, and 40 more categories. No amount of just personal charisma produces a profile like that. It is produced by decades of delivered results, observed by hundreds of independent professionals who each decided, on their own initiative, to attach their professional credibility to his. It is perhaps the most objective external measure of a career that has, by any internal measure, also been extraordinary. Chapter 10. The Road to Romance, Love, Loss, Resilience, and the One That Got Away. If the professional chapters of Cort Hooper's life read like a systematic triumph, the romantic chapters read more like a great romance mystery novel, full of love, hope, loss, unexpected reunions, and the particular kind of courage in the heart it takes to love again after being hurt badly by loss or otherwise. They are the most human chapters of this autobiography, and the ones he speaks about with the most unself-conscious directness, gratitude and introspection. The grief and the humor in equal measure, the hard-won perspective of a man who has refused at every stage to let the romantic losses define the story. Coming out the end of his own past rom-coms, he still considers women to be God's greatest gift to man, and himself in particular. If seasons were marriages and years in them episodes, then he is in Season 3, Episode 1. The first 2 seasons have 23 and 27 episodes respectively, with the finales both involving abuse and then cancer. Even having a Season 3 proves his self-proclaimed description as an incurable romantic, something he never has and never will change, the early proposals. In college, before the Navy. Before India, before the missiles and the millions, Charles Hooper fell in love, he thought, for the first time. He proposed to a young woman named Jane Wathen, his 5-year girlfriend from senior year in high school all the way through 4 years of college, his one and only through the entirety of his undergraduate career. She was his best friend, but as she was not his soulmate, she did not appear at the altar, the first of 2 runaway brides, long before Julia Roberts made that famous on the silver screen. Jane ran off to live in a commune. Not being able to abide being a naval officer's wife in wartime, he trusted his heart and proposed again, 2 years later, to a stunning model named Robin Ricketts. She also did not appear at the altar. She ran away with an Italian professional tennis player instead. But little did she know of the ride she was about to miss. After her jet-setting days were over, that double blow left Cort Hooper, by his own account, deeply bruised and emotionally unavailable when he arrived in Rhode Island as a newly stationed naval officer in 1972 and met a 40-car pile-up beauty named Terry Ingram at a party. She was a newly commissioned woman Navy officer, Terry Ingram, the one that got away. Terry Ingram was, in Cort's words, a stunning redhead, but more importantly, a really smart, fun, happy, engaging, and remarkable young lady. They were both naval officers, both stationed in Rhode Island in 1972, and in the brief time they spent together, they were, as he would say decades later, inseparable, at least in spirit. She was, he believed at that time, the one he should have married, and whom would have kept Cort from making two wrong turns on his road to romance thereafter. Terry turned out to be his first intimacy and first really true love. But precious few are blessed for that, once-in-a-life happenstance to last a lifetime. Both subsequently went through 2 seasons of separate marriages, with no long-term happy ending for either. At Newport, his heart was still too bruised from the 2 previous abandoned engagements to trust and open fully, and before he could find his footing, they were both reassigned to different commands in different parts of the country. Life took its separate turns. 52 years passed. In October of 2024, his son Matthew found a weathered letter, its author searching for Cort, from Terry in an old cardboard box. It was dated June 18, 1998, Terry's letter, somehow surviving through a quarter-century of life's subsequent roller coaster, speaking across time in the voice of a 23-year-old woman who had not yet become 52 years of growth, absence, and wondering. Cort had also been searching for her after their parting, and in between his 2 marriages over the years, failing to find her after hundreds of hours of effort. One night the next month, his daughter Tiffany found her within minutes, a loving daughter wanting her dad to find love and companionship again. They soon reconnected, long phone calls late into the night. 2 people who had been each other's first true love, speaking again across 52 years of parallel and much different lives. She had been writing a book with his name as a character. He was writing in his life book with her name as an ending still a hopeful mystery. 2 weeks together in Florida in early 2025 answered the mystery. Too much water under the bridge, too many years. The embers were still warm on his side. I still felt them, he says, but the reunion did not produce the hallmark ending he had allowed himself to imagine. It produced instead a lifelong dear friend, a person he would do anything for, and the peaceful clarity that comes from finally knowing what is and what is not when it comes to matters of the heart. If the ending was different, it would have made for a really great Hallmark movie. But subsequently, and providentially guided by the good Lord, he wound up making another, even better one, with the unlikely and providential meeting of his future wife Carol Powell just less than 3 weeks after moving to Central Florida. The timing of Terry driving Cort to Florida, and coming when he did, made Cort and Carol's unlikely meeting and subsequent marriage entirely possible. As an angel from God, that was her assignment and purpose. 23 initial years with Carol Good. Carol the First. 2 years after mutually parting ways with Terry in 1972, his first marriage, to Carol Good, began and lasted 23 years. He has no photographs from those years. She destroyed all his records the day after he walked out the door with his children. The marriage ended not through any failure of love on his part, but because he discovered that his wife had been badly abusing some of his adopted children. He left. He took the kids. He did the thing that a man of character does, even when it costs him everything, because the alternative was to stay while his children were being harmed. He later reflected that part of the trigger for abuse was his wife's cancer, soon diagnosed thereafter. He does not speak extensively about those years, partly because the records were destroyed, and partly because the wounds his children carried out of that household are theirs to carry or disclose as they choose. What he says is simply this: it ended the way it had to end. He filed divorce for the right reasons, and he has no regrets about his decision, even if he carries the losses of it all to this day. The greater love. 27 years with Rhonda Brashear. At 49 years old, after the dissolution of his first marriage, Charles Hooper fell in love again with a woman named Rhonda Brashear. He proposed. She said yes. On December 12, 1998, he was 50 years old, and he married her with what he called the total conviction of happily ever after for eternity. He was baptized into the Mormon Church that same year, a church to which she was already a member. He gave her everything he had: a mansion, her dream ranch in the mountains of Temecula, then in the piney woods of Texas, a Mercedes convertible, show horses, including the beloved Destiny, raised from a foal and the companion of their entire marriage, boats, jewelry, cases full, gardens, flowers, buckets full, always with all my heart and adoration, which was amply returned in kind, he says. 27 years of a life built together on horses and ranches and holidays, and a genuine mutual love that is documented in hundreds of photographs across over 2.5 decades. The marriage ended in early 2024, painfully and suddenly, in a way he still does not entirely understand. He does not dwell on the ending. He dwells when he dwells on Rhonda at all. On December 12, 2023, their 25th anniversary, when he was still celebrating what he believed was a love that had made it through the hard years to something eternal. And then a few months later, she was gone. And then, in early 2025, she was gone in the most final sense. Terminal brain cancer ending a life he had loved for a quarter-century. He honors the 27 good years. He mourned the loss. He holds this one regret plainly and without drama. I'd do it all over again, but not have to lose Rhonda, so I could have loved her longer. A new beginning at 77. At 77, with his daughter's help and a Match.com profile, Charles Cortland Hooper began again. 108 likes and super likes in the first days, narrowed to 6, communicated with 4, dated 2, kept 1, all in 90 days. Romantic grass never grew high under his feet. The special woman who cut his grass the first month he moved to Florida in July 2025 was named Carole Powell. Beautiful both inside and out. Spiritual, fun, smart, adventurous, up for Cort's final ride, and he fell fast as did she. Both had lost 25-year marriages to cancer, healed the best they could. He offered a ticket, and she accepted. Needless to say, family and friends of both were surprised but also delighted. He reports this timeline with the precision of a systems engineer and the delight of a man who is, still at 77, capable of being surprised by love and joy. The Lord works fast sometimes, he says. He kept up. His personal summary of the romantic chapter of his life is delivered with the timing of a man who has been telling jokes since 1965. Final score in the marriage department: 6 yes proposals and 3 marriages, batting .500, 2 marriages that ended prematurely, batting .000, overall lifetime batting average, batting .250. Sadly, not enough for the Romance Hall of Fame, down but not out. Kind of like a James Bond martini, shaken but not stirred. He then adds with complete and characteristic sincerity, "To all the girls I've loved before," like the Julio Iglesias song, I feel actually and truly most grateful, thankful and blessed no matter how things turned out. I got to love, provide, protect, adore, and/or spoil them, being loved and adored by most in return. And raising families with two, I came to know the great female gift. The Lord gave us men who sometimes just need to have our moments, who live with us as our spouses, lovers, best if not only friends and companions. They even let us have dogs to make up any deficiencies. He means every word. Season 3, Episode 1 is now being written with Carole number 2, scheduled for another full 25 episodes, Lord willing. Chapter 11. Family, the children who chose him back. Among all of Cort Hooper's 110 documented lifetime achievements, the one he places above all others is not a medal, a degree, a deal, or a championship. It is this: he showed up for 4 children who were not born to him, who had been abused, abandoned, or were in need of a permanent home. He showed up completely, unconditionally, and at enormous personal cost. He adopted 4 children, fostered 2 more. He raised 6 teenagers under one roof simultaneously and survived that experience at his 5,000-square-foot Rancho Casa in Temecula, California. He coached their sports. He built their play facilities. He maintained working horse farms for their love of animals. He attended their school board meetings and attended all their activities. He built them places large enough to run wild in, and when his first wife began hurting them, he walked out the door with his children in tow and did not look back, leaving everything behind to get away from that evil permanently. The thriving mining business, all financial assets, the homes, cars, horses, and pets. Everything but his most precious treasure, his children. His son Mark carries the family name forward, middle-named Cortland, the keeper of the flame. As Cort calls him, his prodigy Maverick Cortland is Cort's only grandson. The world now has 3 Cortlands, probably a full plate in that category. His only daughter Tiffany, adopted first and a daddy's girl, for sure, has his only granddaughter Viviana, and Matthew, the oldest, is still solo. All 3 have good hearts, what Cort tried to engender most in them. These children Cort chose, now between mid-40s and early 50s, chose him back in ways that mattered more than he expected. He has been asked to serve as best man at 7 weddings, a measure, perhaps, of how many people have wanted him standing beside them at the most important moment of their lives, as he stood beside his children. His brother Brad, a decorated and retired police captain, continuing the family's service tradition, has sons Daniel and Brady. They have been reconnected as caring brothers in more recent years and chat regularly. The rather small Hooper family, spread across the country, carries forward a name and bloodline that goes back to the founding fathers and forward to future great-grandchildren who do not yet know what remarkable DNA or personal heritage they are chained securely to. With the passing of his second wife, Rhonda, and having to fight her family from them, trying to take his assets, Cort lost an entire former extended family through that marriage, terminating a sister-in-law, 2 daughter-in-laws, 5 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren, all whom he loved, helped support, and will never see again, a loss he will always carry. With this door closing, the good Lord opened another with the recent marriage to Carole Powell and the extended, lovingly accepting family in tow. Another daughter, Robin, and her husband, Mark. 4 grandkids, Chase, Hunter Caden, and Madison, and 2 great-grandkids, Alina and Paxton. Even Carole's cat Fergie to keep Cort's cat ranger company. A sequel to Full House is in the works. Chapter 12. Animals. The fun and furry family. There is something deeply revealing about how a person relates to animals. Cort Hooper did not keep pets as accessories or horses as status symbols. He kept animals as companions, as partners in competition, as beings whose presence made every place he lived more fully alive and loving. The animals in his life, and there have been many, are each a memorable short story in themselves. The horses. The horse story started with Cort riding the grandparent Hooper's Tennessee Walker, Sonny, at their Idlewild home Fern Haven. Early in his first marriage to Carole Good, he bought her a retired barrel racer, Red, who started a chain of horse-loving that never ended for Cort. Soon thereafter, he hired a trainer who helped purchase a yearling, who was shown and started a never-ending winning streak. Success breeds success, and he started acquiring and breeding his own herd of show quarter horses, after buying an Ocean View ranch just outside of Rancho Santa Fe to do so. Being all in on all things involved, Cort became the president of the Pacific Coast Quarter Horse Association with thousands of members, and shows to sponsor and schedule each year. No toe in the water for Hooper. Over 50 horses were owned, loved and lived with over a lifetime. The horse story continued with Blondie and Dagwood, Rhonda's first horses, at the Garner Valley Mountain home, whose names suggest both the gentle domesticity of early married life and Rhonda's sense of humor. It started with the full herd at Braemar Farms in Del Mar, where 148 horses once grazed on 11 acres. And the children grew up learning the particular education that comes from caring for an animal that could kill you and chooses not to. With an empty nest and second marriage, the herd got much smaller, and the breeds diversified into Friesians, gypsy vanners, draft horses, and Arabians. Then there was Destiny, raised from a foal. Champion competitor, the mare with the most graceful gait and trot one could imagine, who spent almost the entirety of Cort's second marriage at his side, or rather, at Rhonda's side, as the second great love of her life. Destiny cavorting in the yard of the Murrieta mansion with her emotional support goat Gwendoline is one of the most charming images in this entire book of memories. Then the last bred Shiloh, photographed on the first day of his life, held in the arms of a man who understood that the first day of any life is a remarkable thing. The American Quarter Horse Association record, 4 world championships, 12 state championships, 48 regional championships. The crowing crescendo of this chapter, by these noble animals and their partnership with their loving owners and trainer. It represents decades of serious competitive equestrian work at the national and international level, a priceless trail ride. Dogs, cats, and the wildlife at the farm. At Willowbrook Farm in East Texas with Rhonda, the animal kingdom expanded beyond horses. Griffey Bear, the farm's primary guard dog and protector, whose name suggests both size and temperament. The other great Pyrenes named Willow, who gave the farm its name. The cats, who, by Cort's candid accounting, ruled the household while the dogs drooled. Ranger, the cat photographed with his human in a portrait of mutual contentment that speaks for itself. He is still Cort's cat buddy today. The farm's wildlife was its own ongoing drama. Squirrels staging elaborate raids on the back deck peanut supply, photographed in poses that Cort labeled with the captions of tiny crimes. "This is a hold-up. This is nuts." Lord of the Rings. Bald eagles fishing the pond at sunrise. A full complement of songbirds, northern cardinals in brilliant red and female olive, blue jays, chickadees, nuthatches, mockingbirds, finches, and that Bigfoot in the trees at the property line now residing in Florida. The squirrels, he once commented, apparently mistook him for a peanut vending machine. He did not discourage them. The previous homes had their own animal chapters. chickens at the volcano home in Tenaja, ducks and swans and snow geese on the Base Lakes, at the Desert Old Woman Springs Ranch in Lucerne Valley, California, the extraordinary bird breeding island on the main lake there, at Braemar Farms, dogs and cats and horses in the particular chaotic harmony that large working farms produce, animals across every chapter, in every place he lived, always. The good Lord's gift of beauty and animal companions also teaching us how to love. Chapter 13, World Travels, 7 Seas, 7 Wonders, and the Education of a Lifetime. Cort Hooper has always understood travel not as tourism, but as education. The specific kind of education that requires you to put yourself physically in the presence of something different or larger than yourself and allow it to change you. He has traveled to 24 countries, most continents, and all 7 seas. He has visited all 7 wonders of the modern world and several of what remains of the ancient ones. He has scaled the tallest mountain peaks in the lower United States, more than a dozen times each. And he has done multiple 500-mile high-altitude survivalist backpacking treks through terrain of California's high Sierras that challenges the body in ways that no office or boardroom ever can. There was always another mountain to conquer or horizon to explore. He still does today. India at 21. His first international experience was his most dramatic. In 1969, at 21 years old, the United States government dispatched Charles Cortland Hooper to India as a goodwill ambassador. And what followed was one of the most unusual assignments in the history of American diplomatic service. He was received at the presidential palace. He advised the President and Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. He was reviewed by India's top military general. He was received by the American ambassador. He performed folk songs before 500,000 people on Independence Day. He received letters of commendation that would follow him for the rest of his career. His mission was to provide the blueprint for that country to develop its youth, getting them developmental experiences and education non-existent in the villages in which they grew up and seldom traveled more than a few miles. Today's transformation to a country educated in the sciences, health and technology is a testament to that country's vision in 1969 and ours for sending an emissary to lay the groundwork and start the fire. India calibrated his relationship to the world permanently. He came to understand at 21, in a way that many people never understand at any age, that the world is both vast and comprehensible, that every culture, every civilization, every wonder is accessible to anyone willing to show up with curiosity and respect. He has carried that understanding in every journey since. His work there, however brief, is a memory and legacy he is most proud of as a contributor. The Nile Cruise and the Mediterranean. At 61, Cort and Rhonda took what he called a shakedown cruise on the Nile River, a luxury journey through the heart of ancient Egypt, past the temples of Luxor and Karnak, past the Valley of the Kings, to the pyramids at Giza that have stood for 4,500 years. They continued to Greece. Athens, the Parthenon, then undergoing its long restoration. The islands of the Aegean, Hydra, with its dense vertical villages and storefronts below houses, and the other jewels of the Mediterranean. Then Geneva, Switzerland, then Dubai, Uwe, the gleaming modern city that has risen from the desert in a single generation. The photographs from this trip shows a couple deeply comfortable with each other, sharing wonder at civilizations that rose and fell while their own country was still a dream. Cort Hooper has always understood that looking at the pyramids, while knowing you have built buildings yourself, arranged billions in financing yourself, commanded teams and systems yourself, produces a particular kind of humility. The pharaohs of Egypt faced the same fundamental challenge every leader faces. How do you build something that outlasts you? It is a question Charles Cortland Hooper is still working on. It will be partially answered and fulfilled with his upcoming impact contributions to India's smart cities, a capstone to the other legacies that have come before. Panama and the Liberty Capital Corporation, his international footprint extends beyond travel. In 2006, he established Liberty Capital, Incorporated, a Panamanian international business corporation domiciled adjacent to the Panama Canal. The brilliantly engineered system of locks connecting two oceans that represents one of the great engineering achievements in human history. After configuring it to develop green energy systems, he later worked for 17 years to implement related systems for economic development on various Native American reservations across the United States, a project that reflects both his professional expertise and his commitment to the communities whose heritage he has honored since his Eagle Scout days, and being designated and honored as an honorary Shoshone tribal chief. Chapter 14. What others have said and written in his life book, 60 Years of Independent Testimony. The most honest measure of any person is what those who knew them say when they are not in the room. In Cort Hooper's case, the record spans 6 decades and multiple entirely different contexts. From the 1965 graduation yearbook of Los Angeles High School to the 2024 endorsements on LinkedIn. And it is remarkable for its consistency. The same words recur, the same qualities are named: character, trust, integrity, and a desire to serve. The same man shows up in every account. High School, 1965. The class of 1965 at Los Angeles High School knew Cort Hooper as a mystery who never asked any of the girls out, since he was not old enough to drive. A 16-year-old all-city colonel, valedictorian, twice-lettered athlete, and the generally acknowledged best student anyone had ever seen at that school. He was dubbed most likely to succeed and was considered to be most likely behind whatever was going on. 55 years later, more than 500 of those classmates have posted on his profile on classmates.com and without coordination, recalling him with a similar cluster of words. Soft-spoken, charming, well-dressed, kind, admired, bright, friendly, modest, clever. I guess I was a good actor and fooled 'em at an early age, he says. But the truth is simpler. He was all of those things. And they remembered accurately. He was just trying to fulfill the Lord's mission he was assigned. That yearbook, sitting in a visible place in his office, reminds him of what people still expect and the memories that produced those words. A selection of the direct quotations from that 1965 yearbook. Since grammar school, I always knew you would succeed to the greatest heights, and you certainly have an incredible start. Anne Marie Miller, I really should hate you for winning all those awards. But I don't. You deserved everyone. Marlene Sauer, dear humble aristocrat, it has been an honor and a privilege knowing you, but a ball of fun as well. Andrea Graham, without a doubt you are the finest young man I have ever known. If I ever have a son, I pray he will be at least 1/10 the man you are. Jack Jackson, Vice Principal. A really sweet colonel. Leslie Yoon, one of the greatest guys I've ever known. Emmanuel King, you've got the greatest personality I've ever seen, and brains too. Rick Edelman, Military Superiors, 1969 to 1974. the formal written evaluations produced by Cort Hooper's military superiors during his 5 years of active service use language about his early military life and impact that transcends the bureaucratic form. Unerring judgment, dedication, and conscientiousness quickly commands respect. A wide range of skill and expertise, seldom found in a single individual. Exceptionally gifted and effective, limitless potential, invaluable asset. Sterling performance, vast experience, intellect, resourcefulness, mature judgment, and strong dedication has served as an inspiration for all others to follow. Never worked with a more dedicated and sincere junior officer. Extraordinary motivation, dedication and enthusiasm, displays warmth, personal insight, and impassioned dedication. Professional colleagues, recent years. From his trading system development era, a colleague posted on LinkedIn. Cort's knowledge of financial technical analysis and investment strategy development, tempered by his extensive experience in M&A and financial investments, is first class. Over the past year, he and I have worked closely on the implementation of an algorithmic trading strategy with a unique set of challenges, any of which could have easily derailed the project. The level of precision in his work and skill with which he met these challenges enabled us to meet and exceed even our own expectations. Cort is a highly skilled and experienced professional whom I have had the pleasure of working with, and would highly recommend to anyone. And from his best friend Merrill Moses, in a recent text message on New Year's 2025. Cort, you are a treasure! It's your face that should be on Mount Rushmore. Your smile, your optimism, your warmth and your sincerity in life inspires all whom you meet. Merrill Moses. The only thing he ever wanted to be etc. head in was the hearts of those he cared about and helped the most. Chapter 15, 110, the documented record of a remarkable life, at some point in a biography of Charles Cortland Hooper. A list becomes necessary. Not because lists are sufficient, they are not, but because the sheer documented scope of his achievements requires acknowledgement at a scale that prose alone cannot convey in a reasonable space. The following is the complete record of his 110 major lifetime achievements, organized across 13 diverse domains, drawn directly from his own autobiographical documentation, including books and videos, education and college, Bachelor of Science in Systems Engineering, UCLA, magna cum laude, Master of Science in Management Sciences, United States Naval Postgraduate School, Doctor of Philosophy in Finance and Human Behavior, United States International University, San Diego, President of Theta Xi Fraternity, President of the Interfraternity Council, recipient of the Order of the Golden Arrow Honor, scholastic rankings and awards, #1 graduate, Los Angeles High School, valedictorian, School of 1,500 plus, #1 graduate, University of California, Los Angeles, Chancellor's Award, School of 35,000 plus, #1 United States Naval Midshipman in the nation, Midshipman Captain out of 6,200 plus, #1 military engineering student, gold medal, military service and medals, United States Naval Officer, 25 military service and other medals including the Vietnam Service Medal with Star, served with Navy SEALs and completed SEAL training, United States Navy Flight School, Jungle Survival School, Sniper Training, Submarine Diving Officer Certification, Aircraft Carrier and Destroyer Officer of the Deck Certification, gold medals from the American Legion, the Veterans of Foreign Wars and the Society of American Military Engineers, Los Angeles ROTC All-City Colonel and Battalion Commander, UCLA NROTC, midshipman captain and battalion commander, naval sea cadet officer and instructor, expert marksman and sniper, class president in all 4 years of naval science. National Precision Military Drill Team Championship captain, twice, honorary Himalayan Gurkha warrior. Secured congressional approval for women's expanded service roles in the military. Social psychologist and director of the Navy's groundbreaking human resource program. DD 214 documented, and by Chief of Naval Operations letter of commendation. National and Public Service. Goodwill Ambassador to India for the United States Department of State and Department of Defense. President of the Pacific Southwest Quarter Horse Association. School Board Chairman. Board Chairman of the Pop Warner Football Youth Program. Third-generation Scoutmaster in the Boy Scouts of America. Vigil Honor, highest award in the Order of the Arrow Scouting Service Organization. Honorary Shoshone Native American Tribal Chief, High Priest and Temple Worker in the Mormon Church. Eagle Scout with high honors, plank holder, San Diego Public Housing Authority. Publications, writing, and major addresses. Extensive national security study for the Congressional Record of the United States Congress. National Human Resource Program Establishment article in the Harvard Business Review. 2 National Financial Advisory monthly publications for individual and institutional investors. Commodities Magazine article author. Journalist for the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner. Major research, study, and publication on organizational development in corporate America. Authored numerous curricula for military leadership and management training for the U.S. Department of Defense. Keynote speaker at the National Reserve Officer Association Conference. Authored the book Trading System Development and Profitability, 2024. Authored a seminal book on longevity named Live Younger Now. 9 more in progress. Science and Technology. Major Metropolitan High School Science Fair winner, rocket scientist and missile guidance engineer, program manager at Litton Industries, military weapons systems reliability engineer. Residency at the National Science Laboratory, Los Alamos, New Mexico. Pioneer developer and programmer of initial early infrastructure that became the worldwide Internet. Team member developing the first LSI computer chip, pioneered use of mini-computers in the legal and accounting professions. Patent co-owner for microturbine technology and cutting-edge power generation. Assembled team for large-scale power generation systems development and construction. Won 800 meters international bid for power generation systems in Mexico, music and performing arts, first chair honors in orchestras playing trumpet, French horn, and baritone horn. Parts in 2 Hollywood films, The Music Man and The Great Gatsby. Various stage play roles in high school and college. Live singing performances on major market radio at KFI Los Angeles. Performed folk songs before a 500,000-plus person live concert audience in India. Second place, Los Angeles Annual Greek Theater Battle of the Bands, as composer and performer. Wrote numerous, though yet unrecorded country western songs. Sports and athletics, high school, varsity letterman twice, Los Angeles High School. College varsity letterman twice, UCLA. Multiple record holder on championship semi-pro sports teams. Team member, 3-time NCAA championship college sports team. American Quarter Horse Association, 4 world championships, 5 state championships, and 23 regional equine championships, 45-year life flag member of the prestigious San Diego Yacht Club, senior softball championship and World Series teams, never lost a racket ball or game of horse to a younger player, even in retirement, business and finance. architect of national corporate human resource programs, systems, degree programs, and certifications. CEO and chairman of the board of two publicly traded national exchange-listed stock corporations in heavy construction equipment and senior care, planned, designed, developed, and/or financed $500 million plus of apartments, shopping centers, office buildings, master-planned communities and houses. Endorsed for 40 separate business skills by an average of 100 plus professionals, each on LinkedIn among 10,000 direct followers. Two-time winner of large-scale international financial market trading championships, All-American Team Investment Advisor. Arranged or financed over $6 billion in investment projects and international assets. Qualified proprietary trader for multiple large investment funds. Highest license test score in the National CC Financial Advisor and Securities Licensing Examination, made millions for each of over 6 dozen investment clients and their families. Government. 50-plus major contracts with multiple United States government agencies. Letters of commendation for excellence from the Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of the Navy, US Ambassador to India, Chief of Naval Operations and Chief of Naval Personnel, Teaching and Training, United States Naval War College Professor and Curriculum Developer, rewrote the leadership and management curriculum for all levels and programs for all such training in the Navy, Army, and Air Force, 5 years training all United States Marine Corps instructors in recruiting skills, beating Xerox Corporation. Conducted leadership training seminars, training over 30,000 professionals. Conducted nationwide financial training seminars for major brokerage corporations. Multi-year monthly bank trust department advisory services and research, professional licenses, life insurance and variable products license, real estate broker license, financial advisor license, 5 separate national FINRA securities licenses, personal, adopted, loved, and raised 4 children, spoiled 5 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. Asked to serve as best man at 7 weddings. Traveled to all 7 wonders of the modern world. Scaled the tallest mountain peaks in the lower United States. Personally and significantly influenced dozens of lives, making millionaires of many, wide reputation for character, integrity, and trust, lived a full, meaningful, and largely happy life in the service of others, often referred to by peers as a modern-day hybrid of Thomas Edison and Leonardo da Vinci. Do the words Renaissance man come to mind, or this guy must have been nuts to try all that stuff in one life? One thing for sure, Cort put all 110 in his sights and took the shot each time. Chapter 16, What He Learned, 10 Indisputable Facts. The life wisdom of Charles Cortland Hooper is not theoretical, it is not borrowed, but some signs pointed the way. It is the specific, hard-won, repeatedly tested conclusion of a man who has lived almost 8 decades at full throttle, who has known success and loss, triumph and heartbreak, certainty and mystery, and who has arrived at the other side of all of it with both his humor intact and his faith etched in his heart. He leaves these primarily for his kids. He wishes he had known them earlier in life, but it is never too late. Cort traversed many uncertainties in life, as we all must. But these facts he found most certain. 1. Don't educate your children to be successful or rich. Educate them to be happy and have a good heart, so when they grow up they will know the true value of things, what is right and wrong, and help others. That is your true legacy. 2. You'll never know when life is going to kick you in the butt. This timing, as in all else, is only in the Lord's loving hands. 3. A healthy life is when you eat your food as if medicines. Otherwise, later you'll have to eat your medicines as if your food. Study longevity. Biological age can be 20 years less than chronical age. Decline is not inevitable. 4. There is a big difference between a human being and being human. Only a few really understand it, being humble and kind. 5. You are loved when you are born. You will be loved when you die. In between, you just have to find a way to manage. 6. If you just want to walk fast, walk alone. But if you want to walk far, walk together, with family, friends, and others you hold most dear. 7. Wearing a $30,000 or $30 watch. They both tell the same time. A Rolex is a waste of both time and money. 8. Whether we carry a $300 or $30 wallet, the amount of money inside is the same. 9. Whether we drive a $150,000 car or a $3,000 car, the road and distance is the same, and we reach the same destination. 10. Whether the house we live in is 300 or 3,000 or 8,000 square feet, the loneliness is the same if within the four walls is emptiness. He then adds, you will realize your true inner happiness does not come from getting and owning the material things of this world. We are just temporary shepherds of them for temporary enjoyment and fun, and pass them on to others in the end. Nothing goes with us. Therefore, I hope you realize, when you have mates, children, buddies, and old friends, brothers and sisters, whom you chat with, laugh with, talk with, sing songs with, talk about north, south, east, west, the weather, or heaven and earth, that is true happiness. And just leave solving the subjects of world hunger and world peace to the beauty pageant contestants, since they both are elusive butterflies. The man who built $500 million in real estate assets and arranged $6 billion more in institutional financing wrote those words. He meant them fully. These facts are not contradictory. They are universal from the same man who was crazy enough to attempt 24 professions to learn these truths. Seen from the different angles of his extraordinary life, so take them with a grain of salt. Chapter 17. What he lived by. 10 Personal Mind State Commandments. The 10 Personal Mind State Commandments that Cort has lived by and attempted to instill in his children and grandchildren are, collectively, the operating system and contextual foundation that runs beneath every other aspect and achievement of his remarkable life. They are not maxims adopted from a self-help book, but some may be found similarly stated in signs at Hobby Lobby. They are the internal code of a specific human being, tested across nearly 8 decades of real experience, refined by real losses, and offered now, without pretense, to anyone willing to receive them. He hopes his kids line up first. He presents them as a supplement to God's greater 10 commandments. Not a replacement, but an extension into the daily texture of a human life in the modern world. Mindset mastery, if you will. 1. Think of the impossible, simply as motivation to feed upon for your dreams. The man who was rated the top naval officer in grade in the entire United States Navy, who arranged $6 billion in financing, who set the SEAL obstacle course record at Coronado, who won 2 international trading championships the only 2 times he entered. The impossible for this man is not a wall, it is a force. It is what happens when the gap between where you are and where you want to be is larger than what the people around you believe is crossable. Cort has crossed it so many times that the gap has stopped registering as a meaningful obstacle. 2. See the glass as always being half full. The alternative is no fun and despair. This is not naive optimism. This is the deliberate choice of a man who watched, up close, What happens to people who choose the alternative? He survived Agent Orange. He survived 2 dissolved marriages. He survived a 5-way bypass. He survived the loss of a woman he had loved for 25 years. He arrived at 77 with enough energy for match. Calm and find and sustain the woman of his dreams. The glass half full is not a personality trait. It is a practice. Make it a habit. 3. Don't sweat the small stuff, because it is mostly all small stuff. 4. Enjoy the little things in life, for one day you will look back and realize they were the big things. Savor something fun and beautiful about life each day, and thank the good Lord for it. 5. The secret to having it all is knowing you already do. 6. Aim at nothing and you will hit it every time. Take the shot, the engineer's rule translated into life strategy. Every major achievement in this biography began with a target, the #1 ranking, the first real estate deal, the trading championship, the book manuscript, the farm, the love. You cannot finish what you don't start, and you cannot start without aiming. 7. You can't finish what you don't start. Do the hardest first. Don't procrastinate. 8. Gratitude is the attitude. Period. You are only guaranteed to find it under G in the dictionary. The parenthetical is the key. Gratitude does not come to you automatically. You go there, intentionally, every day, regardless of circumstances. The man who has lost as much as Cort Hooper has lost, and who still leads with gratitude, is not performing contentment. He has understood something fundamental about the relationship between attention and experience, that what you focus on becomes your reality, and that a life focused on what you have is a richer life than one focused on what you lack, even when the ledgers are identical. 9. Always be humble and kind in helping others all you can. Be their difference by loving and serving them. This is the commandment that ties every other one together. The reminder that all of the achievement, all of the discipline, all of the drive is most meaningful when directed outward. He made 6 dozen families wealthy. He raised 4 children. He stood beside 7 friends at their weddings. He served 30,000 professionals in training seminars. He architected the human resources program that transformed corporate America. He was, as often as possible, someone's difference. This is the commandment he considers most important. It is also the Lord's second one restated. 10. The good Lord made it all, and it is all in his hands. Simply trust and pray to him. As to God's greater 10, he especially emphasizes the 11th commandment, few know and follow, which is the most important. Never, ever, ever, ever mess with the first 10. He closes his mindset commandments with a phrase that deserves its own space. Kindness is just love with its military boots on. See Cortland Hooper. In 9 words, this phrase tells his entire story, that love is real, the boots are real. That love is what drives every act of generosity. The boots are what enable the love to do anything at all in the world as it actually exists. Cort Hooper was never soft. He was never harsh. He was humble and kind the kind of kind he showed others was worn by his father and his father's father, the boots he spent polishing his whole life. Epilogue. The capstone chapter awaits. At 77 years old, Charles Cortland Hooper pulled up his Texas anchor and sailed to Florida. He is writing books at the rate of 1 per year. He is trading the markets with the same algorithmic precision he has brought to every system he has ever touched. He has found and can give a mate's love again. He has found his footing again, and he is looking with the forward-focused energy that has defined him since the age of 5 at what comes next. For him, it will be his algorithmic trading systems development for a financial market never to be solved, and it will be India's smart cities. the optimal culmination and merger of all the advanced technologies he has pioneered or championed. This capstone chapter, as the biographical narration says, awaits, and it will be worthy of everything that came before. When Cort Hooper reflects on the whole of what he has lived, he does not catalogue the achievements. He catalogues the blessings. The warm California sunshine and stunning beauty of the mountains, desert and sea, where he was born and raised. The parents who believed in him and gave him his head. The university that challenged him. The navy that formed him. The children who chose him back through their adoption. The faith that sustained him, and the love of family, friends, and the good Lord himself. And always the one major regret, that certain loves he gave his heart to completely had to end before they were finished, as it had 3 times. Nonetheless, he always religiously obeyed the Lord's 2 great commandments, to love him and all his children, unconditionally. Still, Cort is just trying to figure out how to love and serve better, and how to hold on longer, while feeling better, and living better in the process. In quiet moments of introspection, he is comforted by a feeling of mission accomplished. He has proposed 2 possible epitaphs for the day, hopefully far in the future, God willing, when this story finally ends the first. Here lies Cort humble and kind, the punniest guy you'll ever find. His first choice. His second choice records his probable sporting last words. At last, a hole-in-one! Both are perfect, both are entirely him, he once said, summarizing 8 decades in a single sentence. I may have broken the mold, but the good Lord may not have much desire to fix it. Hard to believe, but probably true. Cort Hooper must have been God's experiment to see how much a person could really handle. He lives grateful for such, and has had quite a rocket ride as a life astronaut. He prays for a soft landing. If you are one who has been along for any of the ride, he is thankful for your companionship, contribution, participation, relationship, and priceless memories that resulted. So, that's his story, and he's stickin' to it. His overall advice is simply summed up in a country western song. Cort Hooper didn't write it, but he tried to live it. Always be humble and kind.